This may look like a jelly bean, but it's actually a dragon egg. And that makes sense because this is the dragon egg from Eragon. And the Eragon movie is all jelly bean there, jelly done that. Even the name Eragon. It's just the word dragon, except this is PG, so they won't give us the D. Greetings, traveler. My name is Nickelhypa and I'm currently lost in this magical forest of hope and wonder. Fortunately, I made a deal with the local flying badgers. They will help me find my way back into town if I contribute in a meaningful way to their mission of the betterment of fantasy fiction. I can think of no better way to fulfill my end of that bargain than to celebrate 20 years of the Eragon movie by calling it bad over and over and over again. 2 decades have indeed passed since Eragon and Saphira flapped into theaters to flip off book readers and casual audiences alike and become one of the biggest flops in fantasy film history. Critics panned Eragon with the severity of a frying pan operated by Samwise Gamgee, and subsequently it faded into relative obscurity, like a dragon-shaped balloon slowly deflating with fantastical flatulence. The consensus at the time was that Eragon's most significant failing was its borderline offensive lack of original ideas. But I believe that the true, biggest and ultimately fatal flaw was not the presence of myriad derivative elements in the screenplay, but was a particular mutant offspring of 2 of those elements. Before I describe that flaw, I must concur that Eragon is indeed the sum of an impoverished man's Star Wars plot, a bankrupt lad's Middle-earth setting, and a swimming in crippling dead bloke's Wizard of Earthsea magic system. Stories built upon borrowed foundations always have a diminished capacity to evoke surprise or deep emotion, but the Eragon movie isn't just predictable or uninteresting, it is broken. I'm using the word broken on purpose. The individual parts do not function together as a cinematic storytelling experience. Here's why. At best, the setting of Alagasia provides no reason for the hero character's motivations, and at worst, it makes their aims look absurd. To all aspiring screenwriters, novelists, and storytellers of all varieties, let me learn you this bit of essential how-to. If you're crafting a story that tells of a struggle between good guy rebels and their bad guy rulers, then you want to set that story in a world where the day-to-day life of the average person is awful. Not boring, not difficult, not annoying, but awful. Eragon's life in Carvajal, however, is as close to perfect as any commoner could hope in a fictional world of the medieval flavor. I mean, by Tolkien's pipe, look at his home. This place is a Thomas Kincaid painting brought to life. The house, the farmland, the surrounding fields and forests and mountains, it's a flawless marriage of the grand and the serene. This isn't a coal mine with forced laborers tolling away at the expense of their own health and sanity. It's not even a moisture farm in a barren desert where the sand is coarse and rough and irritating and gets everywhere. In other words, this is just not the kind of place that makes someone curse the state for their horrid fate. And that, my fellow travelers, is the biggest problem with transplanting a Star Wars-like narrative into a Lord of the Rings-esque world. Middle-earth, as presented in the Fellowship of the Ring, is a place where the protagonists have very good reasons to fight alongside their kings and queens, but absolutely no reason to fight to overthrow them. And the filmmakers were actually aware of this. They simply didn't care enough to rework the elements they would have needed to change to make the narrative function. All they did was include a few generic scenes of stereotypical soldier characters behaving in stereotypical douchebag ways to fool viewers into believing Alagasia is a terrible place, when it's easy to see that life in Alagasia is quite pleasant. The thing that truly emphasizes the improbability of nationwide unrest or outright rebellion in the film's version of Alagasia is the Dragon Rider civil war described in the prologue. People who remember their society's rulers fighting using dragons are unlikely to rebel against the current king over something as trivial as a soldier stealing a few birds or multiple soldiers telling a guy to leave because the guy was speaking heresy against the king. The same people are even less likely to support a group of rebels hell-bent on bringing back dragons and dragon riders. By the gods, this kingdom is going down the tubes. Soldiers, making people sit in time out. And for what? For inciting hatred against the king in public. By the gods, nigh is the time of the sword and the axe. We need to go back. Back to the good old days, when us simple folks had nothing to fear. Except dragons. Dragons with their dragon fire, burning us all to the death. By the gods, we didn't know how good we had it. If only the gods would send us a hero to lead a rebellion against the king, I would be the first to join their cause. Together as one, we could steal the royal jelly bean. An early scene where young men are forcibly recruited into the army is perhaps the best example of how the film fails to show the evil of Galbatorix's regime. The supposed horror of this plot point is entirely contingent upon the audience being unaware that mandatory military service is a given in all medieval kingdoms, real or fictional, good or bad. The apex of this manipulative nonsense is a character's assertion that conscripted men never return. I do not believe anyone could be fooled by this. I certainly wasn't. The film's opening narration and Durza, the king's second in command, both state that Galbatorix no longer encounters any substantial opposition. So why wouldn't the new recruits return then? Are countless men dying annually in a war that isn't happening? Or are we expected to believe that military campaigns consisting of walking around villages, stealing birds and ordering old men to shut up have a 100% mortality rate? So, in conclusion, riddle me this, Tom Sawyer, or whoever wrote this movie. If a peaceful rural existence is the norm in Alagasia, and if the rulers don't systematically oppress the citizens, and if the state police are only deployed against thieving rebels whose actions may make dragon wars become a thing again, then what reason does the audience have to care about anything that's happening? Now you may be wondering why I haven't yet discussed the murder of Eragon's uncle, or Durza's capture and torture of Arya, the Elven princess. Alagasia's populace may not know or care about these happenings, but we probably do, right? What if we simply ignore the poor world building and the absence of a greater narrative and focus on the characters? Can we then consider the Eragon movie an exciting heroes versus villains tale? No, that is absurd. Have you seen these heroes? With the exception of Brom, they all have the charisma and the personality of a shopping cart. But at least the villains in Eragon are a menagerie of menace. The phantom kind. We have Galbatorix, the traitor king, played by Malkovich. We have Durza, the fire sorcerer and ultimate shadow daddy. And we have the Razak, royal assassins who have powers and do things. And the beer belly Vikings, ooh, they are mean, fear them and despair. I think it makes sense for me to switch to a less academic style of criticism now that we've reached the topic of villains, because the villains are a joke. And I'm not just speaking metaphorically. The villains in Eragon really make me laugh. This movie is actually kind of unique in how thoroughly it ruins its antagonists. Blockbuster films often have supporting characters exaggerating the villain's might and intelligence to the hero, who then overcomes these oh-so-invincible foes by using the magical power of being the main character. A good movie makes an audience temporarily forget that stories rarely let bad guys win. A bad movie will try to do that, but fail. And here we have Eragon, a movie that seems to go out of its way to not even try at all. I will give a couple of examples. When Durza offers to spare Arya's life in exchange for her revealing the whereabouts of the jelly bean, Arya responds with a sarcastic smile and mocks him for his failures. Straight away, this tells us not to take the film's primary villain too seriously. The entire opening scene, in effect, establishes the idea that Durza, for all his sorcery and flair, is a clueless buffoon. If you have the power to ignite an entire forest with your mind, but the first character you meet still dismisses you as a loser, then you surely made a mistake by pursuing a career in villainy. Here's another example. Sometime after they leave Carbajal, Brom tells Eragon that a 17-year-old farm boy like him might probably last a minute against Durza's assassins. Okay, a 17-year-old farm boy versus multiple demonic assassins, and it would all be over in a minute. I guess that's impressive. You know, I'd wager those same assassins could take down a 20-year-old soldier in like less than 24 hours. Wow. When I think about what Brom says in that scene, I like to picture the screenwriter high-fiving a mirror, because they'd bet Jeremy Irons $1,000 that the director would miss how stupid that line is and would not cut it from the movie. Well, that line stayed in the movie, and the screenwriter, clearly emboldened by this, proceeded to make more money by making more bets and insulting the audience with his villains. I swear by Le Guin's mighty pen, I cannot think of any group of bad guys as allergic to success as Durza and his Razak and his Urkels. First, Durza fails to retrieve the jelly bean. Then he finds out some farm boy has it and he sends his demonic boy band to Carbajal. He could just go and kill Eragon himself, but he doesn't. I'm sure he has a good reason though. Maybe his ex-girlfriend lives in Carbajal and he doesn't want to risk running into her. You know, there's no spell against the awkward in Alagasia, so... Then, even though the Butcher tells the Razak everything they want to know, they kill him. They also kill Eragon's uncle and then they go away. They could have just ambushed Eragon in his house, but they didn't. They probably had a good reason though. Maybe the Wi-Fi signal outside Carvajal was too weak, and so they couldn't livestream their evil deeds in 4K like their fans had come to expect. And as soon as they saw their follower count in freefall, they were like, we cannot stay here. Then, Durza sends more Razak and more Urgals to go get spanked and killed to death and spanked into death. He could just go and kill Eragon and Braum himself, but he doesn't. This time, he does have a good reason. He has to stay behind and finish proofreading his A Court of Thorns and Roses fanfic, because not even the gods can save him if the AO3 county nobles run out of patience. Then the Urgals come back to Daddy, looking like BDSM Vikings returning from an orgy where everyone forgot the safe word. Durza kills one of them for sharing Witcher 4 spoilers in the group chat. Then finally, Durza decides it's time for a new approach. He calls Eragon on Zoom and tells him to come over for some Netflix and kill. And then we get to endure one of the least exciting save the princess and lose the mentor and gain an ally sequences in the history of human things. And I will discuss this part of the movie and the bad boring ending as soon as I have paid my respects to the king of Alagasia. Galbatorix. Let's talk about him for a minute. You know, to give Durza's assassins and Eragon just enough time to duke it out. The name Galbatorix is quite silly. It sounds like it should belong to a character from a Flash-based browser game from the 2000s. Unfortunately, Galbatorix isn't worth a dead pixel compared to the villains in Adventure Quest, and neither low camera angles, nor big maps lit by big flames, nor Malkovich being very Malkovich can help change that. Some may argue that judging Galbatorix this harshly or judging him at all is unfair, given his minimal screen time and the fact that the writers were clearly saving him for the next installments. But I'll tell you what I think. I think the writers should be glad Eragon failed, because that is what spared them from having to craft a sequel with Galbatorix as the main villain. I think they would have needed to carefully retcon a lot of the backstory and world building from the first film to make Galbatorix work. And if they didn't do it well, or didn't bother to do it at all, then the second film would have suffered from having a totally pointless villain, same as the first one. I guess now would be a good time to name those retcon-worthy flaws that I think make Galbatorix a terrible villain. So here they are in order from least severe to most severe. 1. The way Galbatorix speaks is boring rather than intimidating. 2. Galbatorix is too forgiving of Durza's endless incompetence. 3. Galbatorix's past doesn't necessarily portray him as a villain. And 4. We never see Galbatorix being a larger-than-life oppressive figure or having a significant negative impact on people's daily lives. The issue with Galbatorix continuing to rely on Durza, the master of failure, and never punishing him for any of his screw-ups should be self-explanatory. But I want to draw your attention to how Galbatorix's mercy contrasts with Durza's ruthlessness. Durza has no reservations regarding torturing or executing his subordinates when they disappoint him. This means that the villain who was destroyed at the end of the first movie of a planned trilogy was the more evil of the two main villains. Or was he? It could be possible that Galbatorix refrained from punishing Durza out of necessity rather than mercy. Maybe he just hadn't yet found a new and more capable sorcerer to replace his current right-hand man. Were Galbatorix's extreme leniency towards Durza the only redeeming quality in the traitorous king's otherwise evil character, I could overlook it. However, even the introductory narration casts significant doubt on Galbatorix's alleged evil nature. According to Braum, the Dragon Riders fell into infighting. Galbatorix turned treacherous and he wiped out all other Dragon Riders. I'm curious though, given that every member of the Order was battling for supremacy, how do Galbatorix's actions represent a betrayal? To the audience's knowledge, his actions were no different from those of other Dragon Riders, he just ended up being the one who succeeded. Galbatorix being the strongest one doesn't make him a traitor. I want to be clear, I'm not saying Galbatorix isn't a villain. The film leaves no doubt that he's intended to be one. The problem, yet again, is the screenwriter's failure to portray him as properly villainous. They gave Galbatorix a line like, "As long as I am king, disloyalty will be punishable by death." Apparently thinking that only an evil king would say such a thing. Even setting aside how easily one could make the line sound more menacing by replacing punishable with punished, I think it's a pathetically weak attempt at characterization. Just as all kingdoms have mandatory military service for young men, all kingdoms also implement severe punishment for those found guilty of high treason. I think a minute is probably up, so we should check on Eragon, see how he's faring at the Royal Alagasia prison. Okay, looks like he just walked into the Dark Evil prison of Doom and Darkness with no issues. And he found a dark hooded cloak from somewhere. I suppose it's not too wild of a leap to assume Alagasia's prisons have gift shops where visitors can buy stuff for their cosplaying hobby. Welcome to the Royal Alagasia prison experience. We hope you're ready for a life sentence. Wait, did we say life sentence? We meant to say a once-in-a-lifetime adventure. Witness the public execution of your entire family in the morning. Spend your money at the gift shop in the afternoon. The Royal Alagasia prison. There is no escape from the fact that it is awesome to experience the Royal Alagasia prison experience. We are ready to host you, and we hope to see everyone behind our bars. Senior discounts every other Tuesday. BDSM Viking Gorges not included with regular family tickets. The only reason why Eragon is not immediately captured is that he's walking into Durza's trap. But Eragon doesn't know that. You'd think our protagonist, chosen one, hero, boy, special boy, would have a better plan for infiltrating a royal prison than just going there. Rescuing Arya is intended to be the most epic moment in the story so far, but instead, it is one of the worst clusters of cinematic crap ever conceived by humankind. Durza's grand plan for killing Eragon is to throw stuff at him. He doesn't bring any Urgals or Rozak as backup. He doesn't use his fire spells. He doesn't threaten to kill Arya if Eragon doesn't throw down his weapons and surrender. He doesn't think to teleport behind Eragon and stab him in the back. Durza is not even evil enough to tickle Eragon with a piece of frozen cauliflower. And he's not smart enough to mess with his head by making fun of how he relies on Saphira for strength. You know, he could call them insulting names. He could refer to Eragon as a lizard lover or an egg beggar, and he could call Saphira humped me, dumped me, or Tinder surprise, or blue balls, white dragon. We don't get anything like that from Durza, or anyone. There's no quality trash talk in this movie at all. It's astonishing that a scene where so much happens is worth absolutely nothing. Durza gets spanked in the forehead. Braum suffers a mortal wound. A mysterious new ally appears. Saphira crashes through the ceiling and carries Eragon, Braum, and Arya into the sky. And all of this was as exciting to watch as an audio phone book would be to listen. But the worst is yet to come. Welcome to the bad boring ending and the bad boring ending battle. There is no build-up worth speaking of here because, listen, strange people living in mountains making swords is no basis for a system of giving a damn. Supreme emotional investment derives from personal connections to the characters, not from some farcical dragon armor. Come and see the tedium inherent in the screenplay. Help! Help! I'm being bored! You know, I just remembered I think I left the stove on. And I'm gonna have to go check, so please don't go anywhere. I'll be right back. I'm gonna put the game on so you'll have something to watch while I'm away. Don't go anywhere. I'll be right back to just watch the game.
Welcome, we are live at the Vardendeur Stadium, where hundreds of thousands of fans are all fired up for the grand finale. FC Varden Anonymous versus Royal Rangers United. There can only be one winner. Jamie, what are your predictions?
Well, Jerry, you're quite right. I can only see one winner here tonight. And it has to be FC Vardens. I mean, what a season they've had. Flew past the competition in the playoffs. Haven't conceded a goal from open play since January. They have their young, hip, new striker, one of the best in the world. The boy came through their own academy system and he's been scoring for fun. They have this. Trust me, they have this.
Okay, so not much faith in Royal Rangers from that side of the commentary booth.
Well, I mean, Jerry, you know as well as I do why they've got the nickname the Bottle Boys. They don't have what it takes to absorb the pressure of a grand final. They just don't. I'm sorry, they don't have what it takes. They are gonna lose.
But their manager has more experience than any other manager in the top leagues. I think that counts for something.
What are you talking about, experience, Jerry? The Royal Red Shirts, they need to shake things up. They've backed Sir Alex Jose Durza for 18 years. He's never won a final in all that time. The only experience that he counts is counting the losses he's experienced with his team.
Well, maybe tonight is when things will finally click for Jose Durza and his men. Maybe. Could be. The referee has blown his whistle and here we go. Red Shirt United have the ball. Oh my, that is a lovely defense splitting pass from the number 8 over there. Now, can he find the space for the shot? Edge of the box. Jurgen De Bruyne has the ball on his weaker foot. He takes a shot and he scores! Red Shirt United take the lead inside 2 minutes. What a start to the game here at Varandur Stadium. Early goal, a great goal, very good goal. This is exactly what we've come to see. Oh, the offside flag is up.
It took me 3 hours to record the voices for that bit, and I'm not certain it was worth the effort. But on the other hand, how else do you illustrate just how meaningless and worthless this ending battle is? I mean, it really is a group of people that we don't know at all, have no reason to care about, fighting against enemies that have proven to be inept every other time they've been on screen.
The Varden and the Royal Army are just wallpaper for the Eragon vs Durza rematch, and I think that even if for some mysterious reason I liked Eragon as a character, I still wouldn't care much about this duel, or rather I wouldn't have any reason to feel suspense. This is a rematch, and the last time these two fought, Durza had the element of surprise on his side, and he had the home field advantage, and still, he ended up taking an arrow to the face. I have one last complaint before I wrap up this review. Saphira wearing armor is totally stupid. It is yet another example of the writers being clueless and getting things backwards. Saphira is a dragon. She has scales and is in fact called blue scales or bjartskular by the elves. Giving her armor makes her look weak. Whatever badassery the writers were going for with this, they achieved the exact opposite. And they took a beautifully rendered blue CGI dragon who previously stood out from her environment and made her blend in with all the other generic crap. Well done indeed.
Okay, time for end. No more will I anti-praise movie. But I want to quickly address an argument that many people probably used to defend Eragon back when it was released to overwhelmingly negative reviews. The argument that it's just a children's movie. To that argument and those people, I just want to say this. You're not successfully defending Eragon, you're just insulting children. Thank you for watching. Please leave your thoughts on Eragon and my ramblings in the comments if you have the time and desire to do so. I was going to head back into town, but those flying badgers, who promised to be my guides, well, it turns out they like to party. And last night they went particularly wild, so now they're all hungover. And I mean, I'd hate to see a flying badger get pulled down and given an FUI on my account, so I guess I will be staying in this magical forest of hope and wonder for a while, and reviewing things. Farewell, my fellow travelers, and may you never run out of coffee and cookies.